Hello, my name is Mary Miele. I am a tutor, a teacher, a parent, and the founder of Evolved Education Company. We are a full-service tutoring and advisement company for all of your educational solutions. On this podcast, we'll explore ideas, techniques, and resources that you can use to support your school-aged child to conquer any learning issue. I'm so glad you're here.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the August episode of the Evolved Education Company podcast. I am not Mary Miele. I am Becky Reback. I am the head of tutor services here at Evolved Education Company. And this month, we are flipping the switch, and I am going to interview Mary. We're going to talk about a topic that's near and dear to our hearts, which is tutoring. And we are going to talk about how you should approach tutoring and come to think about it now that we're living in 2022, coming up on 2023. The year goes fast. And we really feel that it's important that if you're getting into tutoring or when you're getting into tutoring for your children, that you want to be thinking about the modern way of tutoring. So I'm going to ask Mary some questions about where she started, about where we are now, and then how we are approaching tutoring here at Evolved Education Company so you can understand our model and our philosophy a little bit better. So thanks, Mary, for joining me today. It's a little bit different. Glad that we're doing this. I always love to get to talk to you and interview you. So you started Evolved Education Company in 2014, which is 8 years ago now. Can you tell me a little bit about when you started, what tutoring was like then? What was the approach? How were people finding you and coming to tutoring in 2014?
Sure. Well, thanks for asking that question. It really makes me think back to the days when I was really tutoring quite differently. And I think the whole landscape of tutoring has evolved, over these 8 years, which is awesome to see. But really back then, I was working with families privately, and I would sort of bump into other tutors who were also doing work privately at the time. And certainly a really big area of tutoring was test preparation. And we would come in and prepare kids for the SAT, ACT, ISEE, SSAT. And what parents were looking for definitely was really, really smart people who had already scored their very best top scores on these tests. In fact, that was really the prerequisite. Have you gotten a perfect score on your SAT? Great. That must mean you know how to teach this test. So we're going to hire you for that, right? And in terms of school support, it was really about boosting up skills and knowledge, especially around different areas that kids were struggling with in school. It wasn't so much about assessment, which we'll get into in a minute, but it was definitely just about kind of coming in. They knew something wasn't going that well. And what we were doing was really reteaching a lot of the content that the kids had learned during the day, just to help them keep up with their work that they were doing. We were also doing homework with kids just to make sure it was done well. So it was almost like coming in and being a bit of an assistant and a reteacher, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And of course, I had developed the whole child methodology of tutoring at that time. So our company was coming at it from a whole child standpoint, which was very new to the landscape. And the other new part in 2014 was that we were hiring teachers for tutoring as opposed to really, really smart people who had scored perfect scores on their SAT, or really just maybe teachers in training who we would then manage, or just somebody off the street who we could dispatch to the tutoring job, period, right? So we were really kind of innovating at that time in important ways that still influenced the industry, right? Meaning we came at it from the whole child standpoint, we came at it from an education-based provider, and also coming at it from that flip of the paradigm, if you will, into what are we doing to kind of support this kid as opposed to maybe just getting scores or something like that, right? So there were certain things we were definitely innovating on, but really nothing like what we're doing now. It's come so far. Yeah.
So, and I know that you're going to talk about this because I know, but would you say that this focus on skills wasn't as great then, like you mentioned that you were really focused on the content piece of it, less so on the skills piece of it. And do you think that's something that has evolved over time?
Oh, definitely. We were not at all teaching skills. Every once in a while, we would have that brevity, I guess, just to do it. Like a parent would ask us to create some worksheets to help a child with their grammar or their math skills, or, just to kind of tighten things up. But it was always really content driven in terms of all that.
So now we've landed 8 years later in 2022. We're gearing up for a new school year, even though it's the end of July. But as we know, the summer goes by too fast. So we're coming on the 2022-2023 school year. We just kind of touched on it a little bit, but I'd love for you to tell me how tutoring has changed and evolved over these last 8 years, and just where we are and maybe where you think we're going to.
Sure. Well, I think a really, really big change is that we're so invested in assessment. And I think that we have always been curious about our students and their experience of being a student. But I can say over the past 8 years, we've become very strong in that area of assessment. And we're doing it the way you're supposed to be doing it in education, in that we're not really looking at one snapshot of a student of data, right? We're looking at a variety of different data points to provide us with a holistic understanding of that student's academics, learning, as well as their social, emotional, and physical development at home, in school, even on the field of sports, right? We're expanding our look of this student. And through the assessments that we have formed, now we're calling it the 360 assessment, which we're offering this fall, we can really target the areas that a student is challenged with in a way that provides strategies to teach them the ways that they can improve themselves as learners. And these strategies become skills as a student uses the strategies over and over and over again. They're actually becoming more skilled as students. So I think that has been a really big change for us. And it's so exciting to think about the potential of working with students in this way, because unlike the way we were tutoring in 2014, we are seeing kids come out of tutoring with an increased level of skill, which means when they leave tutoring, they're stronger students than when they entered, which is the whole point, if you ask me, of why you would invest in tutoring to begin with, right? So I'll pause there in case any of that conjures up some questions for you, and then we can get into the particulars of the services. But yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I would say, and I would love for you to speak more about this too, is that what I think something we do really, really well, and we really train our tutors in this, and we've spent a lot of time talking about this. And I think this is a really big way it's evolved over the years. I've been with you for 2 years, and I think even in the past 2 years, it's evolved, is the metacognition and the piece of teaching kids. Metacognitive is teaching kids or people how to think about the way they think, right? So you touched on it saying that we want to teach kids how to be good learners. And part of that is helping them understand the way that they learn and think about why something worked for them or why something didn't work for them and how to modify or stick with it in the future. I think one way that we do this really well is we incorporate the Mindprint learning assessment into our 360 approach to assessments, which is a cognitive-based assessment. And we're really teaching kids that metacognitive piece that's so important for them. I'm wondering if you could speak to a little bit more about how we develop that and how we work that into different types of personalities of kids to help them grow the skills that we're really targeting now.
Sure. Well, I think the best way to answer that is probably with a little bit of a story. And the story goes like this. Let's say you have a student and you're hired to tutor them because math has been really challenging and they're just not getting fabulous scores on tests. They're starting to feel badly. They come home crying and mom and dad are kind of throwing their hands up saying, we don't know how to make this better. Or we've tried this, we've tried that. We've talked to the teacher. We've done everything we can do. We just don't know what else to do. Right. And maybe you've already also had a tutor in, and that tutor has come in and tried to explain the math in a different way to your child, and still you don't have a different result, right? And so what we do when we come in is, yes, by administering the mind print learning assessment, we can understand a child's reasoning, their memory, their processing speed, their executive functioning, and we can understand if something there is causing the student to have the challenge, then we can address our teaching from a point of root cause. We can go in and say, okay, we're noticing that your child is having a processing speed issue, meaning their processing takes some time. And so really the solution to the challenge that your child is having in math comes with previewing the topics, comes with giving your child a bit more experience with the math, maybe some hands-on experience with the math. And by targeting the solution to the problem in this way, we are most effective. And we also help a student to feel great about their learning experience because they understand now, you know what, this isn't an effort issue. This isn't an I'm stupid issue. This isn't a I am bad at math issue. This isn't I can't do this issue. This is an issue that happens in my brain and my processing speed is slow. And so I deal with it by implementing these 3 strategies. When I implement these 3 strategies, I am successful in learning math. I am successful in my class. I am a strong student. And therein lies the power of the type of tutoring that I want to be involved in. And what we're creating here at Evolved is an avenue for that story to become every student's story, whether they're struggling with math, whether they need to take a test, whether they need to improve their reading. Let's target the issue at the root of the issue instead of putting a Band-Aid on it, or instead of having a child internalize that they're always going to need help or that they're going to have a tutor, right? These are other ways of understanding tutoring. And that's not what we're interested in providing our students.
I think that's so important. I think, so much of what affects academic learning is also the social emotional side and teaching the kids how to be confident in their abilities. And also then if, maybe something is challenging for them, how to advocate and say like, hey, I have slow processing speed, or I need a visual aid, right? So teaching the kids how they learn in order to help them be more successful in their learning.
Exactly.
So exciting. So at Evolved Education Company, we divide our tutoring into 4 service areas. This is sort of when people call us and they tell us about their child, we kind of put them in a little bit of a bucket so we can best service them. So we talk about test prep, executive functioning, subject area tutoring, and remediation. I would love for you to speak to each of our 4 service areas and how we're growing and developing those and how we approach those service areas so we can best support the students that we're working with.
Great. Wonderful. Well, absolutely. So I think putting services in containers such as this does allow us to develop these important areas of need for our students. But I would also just say that we're not at all beholden to just these 4, because if a student is having an issue, we don't simply just categorize them as one of these 4. Sometimes it's actually a mix of the 4, or sometimes we're thinking about a student in a very unique way. So it just helps us, though, to develop our skills and understanding within these very important 4 areas. So I just want to preface the sort of context of these 4 areas for everyone to understand. So starting with what I guess everyone really understands, maybe the two areas that most people understand is the subject area tutoring, which is just, let's say your child's having trouble in math. Okay. So if we're having trouble in math class, what we have is a school-based subject area tutoring bucket. And this allows us to take a look at the program your child is in and the curriculum they're involved in. And we're going to ensure that the way in which the tutor is teaching and supporting aligns with the expectations of that class. Now, expectations could be really all over the map. It could be curricular expectations. What do they need to know content-wise, vocabulary-wise? What kinds of pre-skills do they need to have coming into the unit, right? And then we also talk about the other expectations, like how do you prepare for the tests? Are the tests actually content-based, or are you going to have to apply yourself in the test? So we're really looking at the expectations of the course, and we're tutoring and assessing the students from that viewpoint, for them. So that's subject area tutoring. And our sort of spin on it is that it's school-based subject area tutoring. The other one is test prep. So most people understand test prep, and this has been why tutoring probably came to be to begin with, is because we had to prepare for standardized tests. So the way in which we do this is we always start with a mind print learning assessment, which tells us about our child's cognition. We talked about that earlier. And we also have the child take a mock test, which gives us a starting point. Sometimes we do that mock test right at the start. Other times, some kids benefit from a little bit of teaching before they take the mock test. We are flexible. And we make sure that we're teaching the test strategy and content in a way that a child can learn best and have an expedited process. Let's be honest. Most of us don't want to be investing in test prep, period. And most of us don't want to spend more time prepping for a test than is actually needed. So I think the benefit of our test prep process and service is that we're really doing those assessments in the beginning to make sure we are delivering personalized strategy and content to the student in very carefully curated lessons for them. In addition, we use content in the Test Innovators program to give students content to practice, tests to take, and things of that kind. So we really think of it, from a very holistic standpoint. Okay. The other two, maybe you haven't heard about, and maybe this is newer to you, but parents do call in and say, my child has missed something. There's a gap. We are not where we're supposed to be. We're not on grade level with reading. We're not on grade level with math. There's some kind of learning issue happening. We need something called remediation. Remediation is when you are going back a little bit in terms of grade level, and you are shoring up the skills that a student has so that they can do the tasks that they're needing to do. Maybe we need to work on decoding and reading using Orton Gillingham. Maybe we need to teach writing skills within Writer's Revolution or SRSD writing. Maybe we need to use multisensory math in order to really make sure a student is learning the mathematics. I've used touch math to help students with their facts. So it's just a specialized approach to help students who need that, skill building and remediation. And then the fourth bucket is newest to us and so exciting because I've been involved in executive function coaching for many years now. And we have this summer worked on developing something called an integrated model of executive function coaching. And this model takes the research available to us, it implements it into a model that we can continue to evolve with students. But for all intents and purposes, for parents listening, what it really is it's an infusion of strategies into your students' actual work process to help them to build their executive functioning skills. So I'm super excited to have this as part of our offering this coming year because I've already been using it and it's been very, very impactful for our students. So I'll stop there and you can keep asking me questions. Otherwise, I'll just talk all day. You know me, I'm just going to blab about all of the exciting services that we're having just because I am so excited about the transformations that I'm seeing in our students. It's really fabulous. Yeah.
I was going to say, well, you're very passionate about this, which is, I think, a reason why it's successful, because you truly love it and you dive into the research to understand it, and we work together, and it's really great. I think that all the services, there's so much more we could say about all of our services and the way that we approach each student. I guess I have kind of two little questions left. The first is I would love for you to speak about the bespoke aspect of our tutoring, and how, yes, let's say, for example, in the test prep or in the Evolved Education integrated executive functioning model, we have a process that we go through, but we're really meeting the student where they are. So if you could elaborate on that a little bit more, just so people know that we're not just checking off a list, that we're really tailoring it to what each kid needs.
Exactly. And that's always been so important to me. That's probably something that has never changed in the way I work, or since 2014, in that I'm listening to our families and our students, and I'm trying to make sure that we're really putting in place services that align to what they're most comfortable with, but also what I feel is going to make the most impact. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I guess I gave the example of the test preparation process. Typically, we would do a mind print and a mock test to start. But yes, sometimes students come in and they really don't feel comfortable just jumping into a mock test without ever knowing anything about the test. And so we ask questions ahead of time to gauge if we are putting a child in a comfortable position there with that part of the process. And if we're not feeling that the child's going to be comfortable, or it's going to backfire on us and make a really make for a bad situation for that child, or a poor experience, then we're going to move differently. And even in the remediation, I can think of a number of times in which a family has completed a neuropsych evaluation, and there have been many different areas of remediation that have been recommended. And we have had conversations with families about what they feel they can actually manage with their schedules, and what the child can manage with remediation, and where we should start given those kinds of concerns or constraints. So I think it's always important to understand that when you're coming into the Evolved Education company as a family, that we spend time with you talking and collaborating and understanding, and also advising in this process that we feel is not only a huge investment of your finances and time, but also of your child's actual experience. Like, they're the ones that are going to have to sit there and do this work. And we want to just make sure that if we're doing that, and if you're going to say yes to that, that we're putting your kid in a space that's going to be best for them, and not every kid, right? Mm-hmm. And it kind of brings me to the tutors a little bit, because, tutors come to us from other companies. Sometimes they come to us from schools, and sometimes they come in and they ask really good questions like, what book do you use for your test prep? Or, what materials do you use? What lesson plan format do you use? And I always kind of laugh a little bit, because I've always been very clear with our tutors in saying, I need you to have space here. I will give you all the resources you need, all of the information you need about what you're tutoring. I will develop you over time. We will continue to talk. This is not just one time, but we will not give you one way to do something intentionally, because I need our tutors to be responsive. I need them to be creative thinkers. I need them to assess. I need them to deliver lessons that mean something to a child that they know inside, outside, upside down. So that's important as well, right? And that becomes an avenue of bespokeness for our process, because you have an adult, a teacher, a trusted adult, a teacher, a mentor, somebody who you really trust coming in to be with your child, who's going to lead this process in the best way for your child, right?
Absolutely. And you just led me perfectly into my final question here before we wrap up, which is, we are invested in the children, of course, and the families, of course, but we're also really invested in the tutors. And I think this is really important for families to know about. As you mentioned, we're hiring teachers. We're hiring people that have dedicated their lives to learning about learning and how to teach ways of learning. And we, many of our tutors come from schools or previous companies, or as you mentioned, but we also spend time developing our tutors and providing some professional development support for them as well. I would love for you to talk a little bit more about how we develop our tutors and ways that we support them, so that way they also are on the cutting edge of the newest research and understanding of how to approach a student and how to tutor, and they're evolving with our company as we do.
Sure, absolutely. Well, it's always been really important to me, like I said in the beginning, to hire teachers who I feel can assess and teach without me or the company being involved. So I always wanted, if I was going to have a client come into Evolve to ask for tutoring, I wanted to be able to provide them with a tutor who was skilled and connective and able to assess their child in every way, shape, and form. But I also knew that the best teachers have the best support. And it's always been very important to me to be informing our tutors of various updates within our field, with different ways of looking at students. We've done team meetings, we've done workshops, we've done courses together. We've taken our whole team to different types of trainings, such as SRSD writing and the executive functioning smarts programs, just to simply teach them about what's out there and to build their own skill sets, right? But internally, we've started the teaching school last year, and this has been an evolution of its own, in that we are still working on exactly how we're going to organize this on an ongoing basis. But what I would say that we are committed to doing, and we've done right now, is we've trained our teachers in these 4 different areas of tutoring, and we've allowed them access to all of our research, all of our writing, all of the materials that we are using. And we've invited them to improve those materials, to use them and adapt them for the needs of their students. So I think it's pretty special when we do our professional development, because I love sharing the information with our educators, but I also love that we always invite them to take that training, to take those materials and to marry it with their student. And I think that's what's really super special about our training, is that we provide our tutors with that space, as I mentioned before, which is so, so important, to be able to connect with their students' needs in the moment. I just want to end with this one thing, because I think a lot of people listening may not really understand what even happens in a tutoring session all of the time. But I love teaching teachers about this, because in a classroom setting, the teacher is really driving all of the learning and has a lot of control actually over what's happening in the learning experience. But in a tutoring situation, the student is really driving so much of the learning experience and what is needed in the lessons provided. And I, as a tutor, can come in with my own set of what I want to accomplish, like I would a classroom maybe. I have a lesson plan, I have things I want to cover and all of that. But as I'm teaching this one student, something may come up that teaches me that I need to change what I'm doing, because the student has informed me that this part of what I'm teaching is tricky, it's misunderstood, there's a challenge with it, and I have to pause and I have to address it in the moment. So I like to tell teachers that, because to be a tutor requires a flexibility that maybe you might see, I don't know, to draw an analogy, let's just say you're an actor, right? And you get a script and you get to prepare for the script, and then you say your script just as it is. And that's one way of performing. But if you're improving, you're going to have to riff off others. You're going to have your own skill set in the back end of your brain to pull from. You're going to have to be able to respond in the moment and also be willing to say, that didn't work. I had thought it would work, but it didn't work. And why didn't it work? Let's talk about that a little bit. And I think that that's the kind of skill that we are developing at Evolve that's very, very special and extremely motivating to a large number of professionals who teach. They want this kind of challenge. They want this connection. They want to be able to think on their feet. They want to be able to be curious and to problem solve in the moment. And I think that that's another way that we are really digging into the development of our tutors. So I'll sort of end there in case you want to.
Yeah, that was great. I mean, I think it's so important to know that a tutoring session looks really, really different from a classroom setting. And that, like you said, the child really drives what's going on. Even if a tutor comes in with their own lesson plan and ideas, you have to be able to change on the minute if something's not working or if something really is working and you want to run with it a little bit more, right? That happens too. Well, thank you so much for letting me take over today. It was so fascinating and I love listening to you. You're so passionate and just really love, developing this area of education, which I think is, so needed. So thank you so much. And I hope everybody enjoyed the little role reversal today. And if there's anything you wanted to say to kind of close out the podcast, I'll let you finish it up. But I really enjoyed being in the questioner seat today and hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Thanks, Becky. Yes, I just want to really close up just by saying that we hope that this provided you some insight into how we think about tutoring. And also just, I think the most important message that I would close with is that your child's learning is so important to us. And we will stop at nothing to make sure that that learning experience is producing results of a special kind, really. And I want to just say that if you have questions about our program, or if you'd like to sign up for our program, or if you're listening to this at a later date than this, please come on by and book a consultation call with us to discuss your child, and we can help you to determine which type of tutoring will be best for your child. We can give you a proposal. You can have really just an introduction into how we can support you. And I hope that you do take us up on that. So thanks again for listening. And I will see you next month at the start of school. I cannot believe we are almost in September, but enjoy these last few weeks of the summer wherever you are listening. And yes, thank you, Becky. Your interviewing was amazing. It was very fun to take a minute from that role. It was really fun to just be able to share where I've also been and where we're taking this next. So thank you so, so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for listening to Evolved Education. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and write a review. You can send us any and all educational questions to hello@evolveded.com, and we'll try to address it in our upcoming episodes. That's Evolved Ed, EVOLVEDED.com. To learn more about how we can support you, go to evolveded.com and book a complimentary 15-minute phone call with us. Are you a professional educator? You can join our teaching school membership platform to gain support and engage in a community interested in learning together. Click on the link in our show notes to learn more.